Hey, how you doing? Thanks for joining us here on the Jess Marshall podcast. This week, I've got the honor of having on Casey Smith with Atlas Transaction Coordinator Services, and we're going to talk everything from entrepreneurship to building teams to sales hacks. We're also going to talk about overcoming adversity and forging that metal mindset that we always talk about. Hope you enjoy the episode. I think you will.
So many people were like freaking out. They stopped doing everything, and everyone asked me, they're like, how did you grow? I was like, I grew. Like, we were already set up to be virtual, and everyone in my network exploded. Yeah. Like, there were very few people that were held down, and I think it's just because of how it's your network and like who you're around. And our mentors, Sharper, they literally started meeting with us, and they said, take everything we said, because we do EOS implementations in 90 day. They said, throw it all out the window. We're on a 7-day track, so like every 7 days. Like, check in, reevaluate, and go. And it's like just switching your mindset and be in like real-time crisis. It's so valuable, but people get so hung up on what they know they're good, you know? Like, so they're not really prepared to pivot, and the fear just comes over them. So many of my like smaller clients dropped out of the game. Like the small guys did, but we grew exponentially with others. It's great in other markets, and everyone was like coming to me like, "What markets are growing? What's everyone doing?" Everyone switched to virtual. It forced title companies to like completely revolutionize and get going on virtual stuff. So I'm like, I saw so many positive things happen. While everyone's at home, and I literally was going through divorce. I literally walked out March 12th, 2020. Wow. Right before lockdown. Wow. So I just put my head down and freaking went to town. I like looked up and like, wow, everyone's freaking out. Yeah. It was weird. Right. It was wild.
So the most amazing thing about the entire COVID thing to me is you can learn so much about people in times of duress. That's good. And when all of my people were not freaking out, but just like, what do we do? You know, I immediately printed us off, because we're essential, we're construction, so I printed us off a work order, you know, with the statement from the government, laminated them all. All my people had them, right? Even at Home Depot, they were stopping people at the door, going, "Are you essential?" Right? And they had this, and I signed it. You know, I notarized that motherfucker. I mean, I was like, "Let's
notarized."
Yeah, I mean, let's go. Like, we stand behind this. But a lot of people think like, hey, I always want to win. Right? I just want to win, right? Or I never lose. I either win or learn. But the most successful people that I've ever been around seek out failure. They're like, okay, here's my goal. No, I'm going to set it higher, because I'm going to miss that goal, but I'm going to hit higher than what I was aiming at to begin with. So what you were saying about when COVID came knocking, you answered with a hammer and a saw, you know? You're like, let's go. Let's build.
It's funny because you started to see the market pivot at the end of 2019. Like, you know, SMS started getting like super rampant, so some of the marketing started to shift around then. And so I started to see, and we had our own issue, like, long story, but what was interesting was I just was like, well, I could do the transaction. I wonder if there's a like need for this kind of service to investors. And I was just playing the field in 2019 at the end, and it just happened to be the thing that saved me. And then we just freaking grew. So it was wild, like how it transitioned. I haven't done a deal in over a year because, well, A, the divorce, but second, I shut everything down there because I had to focus on this because it was just like through the roof. But yeah, it's like, it's not, sometimes it's just being able to pivot, right? Your options are, you know, pivot, stop, or, you know, keep going on what you're doing. Like, those are literally the only options.
Well, it takes a certain degree of clarity to be an entrepreneur and to be able to see that, like, hey, this new demand is emerging, and I'm going to fill that demand, but I'm going to back off of this over here that might not be serving us as well. Oh, yeah. When did you come to that realization, and was that a tough thing for you to do, to pivot, or were you just like, well, there's a demand, and this isn't working, so let's just fill that demand and see what happens, and it kind of felt like it was meant to be, maybe?
Yeah, it definitely felt like it was meant to be, because the way it happened was we actually had found, like, a glitch in the marketing, I would say probably 6 months prior to that. where we noticed a lot of leads were getting suppressed or whatever. So, and then we lost like, gosh, 80 grand.
What do you
in a
mean
week.
by that? Leads being suppressed.
So I don't know if you know Annie and Evo with Batch Lead. We were using their lead stackers, and it wasn't their system or anything. It was just the way that we stacked them. I can't remember the details of the issue because it's been a hot minute, but we talked with them about it, and we're like, it had to do with like the SMS, like how you were sending out SMSs and whatnot. Actually, it wasn't in Batch. Sorry. It was in the actual SMS system. And we've used so many. I don't even remember the name of it. But what happened was the way that you would restack, like it was suppressing leads. So you thought you were putting in like 70 or 80 and it wasn't cycling through them again or something like that. So we started noticing the numbers go down and go like more and more and more in the hit rate. Anyway, we didn't catch it. It took us, it was like a very like minor thing and we didn't catch it. We brought it to people's attention. Everyone's like, oh my gosh, you're right. There is an issue here in how the platform is suppressing the leads. So I wasn't as in charge with that, like doing that. I just was doing appointments, cold calling, things like that. So anyway, long story short, that was happening. So we were getting less lead flow. And then second, on top of it was we had lost like 80 grand in a week in fees, total out of our control, like a gun pulled on our notary by the son of the seller, like just crazy things that you can't even make up. What? And it was wild. I'm sitting on a memo on that house and I'm waiting for the day. Just, sellers pulling out or, just random things. And so all the deals we had on the table fell through. I think the last flip I did was 2018 because it was never my favorite thing to do. Mm-hmm. And so anyway, we kind of sat back after that and was reevaluating, thinking, what do we really want to do here? I personally never wanted to scale a wholesaling operation. It's transactional. It's not really investing. It's really just cash flow. And then the idea is you would take it to invest in something else. But we just weren't really, the marketing was just so much money into marketing that we couldn't really get the momentum.
And you can't really compete if you're not marketing at that level.
You'd
at least not as scalable, at a scalable
it's true.
level.
I sponsor Investor Fuel, and the clients I work with now for my TC company are big fish. I know what they put into marketing a month, and it's like it's not something you have to be good at marketing. If you look at like all of these guys in real estate, they're literally like everything about the operation. You've got acquisitions, you've got transaction coordinating, you've got dispo, you've got the actual marketing side. All of it is really sales except for the TCing part, which is operational. So most of the people in this game are really trying to hone in marketing and their sales technique, but nobody talks about the rest of it and how much falls through, like, what your actual close rate is. We know what's healthy for wholesalers, and then there's people that actually buy and close on it. So anyway, my point in saying that is you have to be generating a ridiculous amount of leads. I mean, those are what we call your KPIs, right? You have to know how many appointments are you going on a week? How many do you have to go on to get that contract? And so many people don't focus on that. They're just throwing it at the wall. But you can't build that business unless you can predict those numbers.
Right.
So I just didn't really like the marketing side at all. So I sat back and thought, there's so many different avenues in a real estate business. You can go so many different routes. You can be a realtor, you can be a wholesaler, you can acquire them, you could do reps, you could just do owner financing. And I feel like a lot of people are aware of the different strategies, but for some reason, everybody's really honed in on this wholesaling because it's quick, easy, don't need a lot of cash. I just don't think a lot of the gurus out there are being very thorough in explaining what kind of process goes into marketing. I just don't think they are. Or the realities of, on the transactional side, how many issues there are, the time it takes to close them, buyers pulling out, having a good buyer network. I just think that you need a healthy, whole company, right. And everyone is just so focused on the wholesaling part. Get the contract, you're good.
Well, I mean, that's the shiny, sexy part of the whole thing.
Yeah.
So of course that's the part that's being focused on by the guru vertical, right? That's what
for sure.
Because they know that anybody who might pay them for their services is interested in how do I get more deals, more than they are in how do I process those deals. Now you could go get all the deals in the world, but if you can't process those deals, then you end up making no money. So marrying your systems and processes to your goals takes, like I was saying before, some clarity.
Oh, yeah.
And if you're not, if you are not able to measure it, you cannot manage it. So if you're not keeping track of your numbers and you don't know your numbers, then you're just going, man, we got a slow month. We got to ramp up marketing more.
And something that I would actually take it goes back further is most of the people that get into this don't know themselves. Working with, are we even recording here? Oh,
so
I was I don't even know what we're doing.
Yeah, they don't know their core values.
They don't. It's even more than that. You have to know something that, like, I work with Sharper Business Solutions, as most people know, for 2 years now. Something that they really hone in on is knowing yourself. Because everybody wants to be the CEO, everybody wants to be the company, but you might not have the personality profile for that. You actually might be more of an integrator processor type. And I have some companies that I work with that are just a dream because they understand the systems and processes. They get me information, all of that good stuff. But they don't know themselves well enough. So it's like people are trying to sit in seats that they probably shouldn't be. Yeah. And they're just this hustle culture. I can't stand it. It's very toxic to me because it's just hustle, keep going, but it's like blind. Nope, you just got to work for it. And yeah, there's some truth to that, but you're going to run yourself into the damn ground. Yeah. I mean, everyone's done it. I went to Sharper when I was exhausted. I had only been in it for like a year or so at that point. And I was like, how do people do this? Like, no one's teaching you how to do your business, like how to actually do the business side of stuff.
And then it just becomes running around putting out fires.
You're on fire all the time.
Yeah.
And then you're being pulled and, everyone's like, well, I can't afford to hire. I can't do stuff. It's like, you can't afford not to hire because it's not sustainable. And so I think people don't realize the amount of work it really takes to be in this field. It's so much work. Yeah. It's not easy. No. So you have to know what type of person you are. Like, I know I have one of those dynamo personalities on the DISC test and a Maverick and predictive index, and I go by predictive index. It's the most accurate, I think, and I hire off of it. So I am one of those people that can kind of do everything, but I'm more of a visionary like CEO, but I can kind of step back and sit in that processing seat. But if I stay there for too long, I will go into this like deep zone, dark place, and I won't even know what day it is or what's happening, and it just kind of kills my vision.
Sure.
So I think a lot of people trying to wear all the hats and sit in the seats, you're really not. You're working in it, and you're not working on it. And everyone says that, but you have to understand where to take a pause and think, what can I start on first? And it's like swirling around for investors because of all the different avenues that you have to do, right? Do I start with marketing? Do I get someone to just handle my leads? Do I hire somebody to help me with the processes? It's this like age-old game that people don't know what to do with. So if you don't know yourself first, you don't know what other half you need.
Sure.
Yeah,
and I've heard some business coaches boil it down to you've got to put your tasks into 4 buckets, right? Like your $10 bucket, your $20 bucket, your $1,000 bucket, your $5,000 bucket. So if you're doing $10 tasks all the time, you got no time to do these $5,000 an hour tasks over here, which are really going to make you money, which are really things only you can do because you're the visionary or you have the personality, the sales personality, or the people relatability. Right? Because there's something to be said for people who have charisma. Not everyone has that.
Yeah.
Where you meet someone and even if the conversation's dead, you could still get that conversation to go 30 minutes.
Yeah. And
that's an art form.
Another thing to that too is we actually put them in a little bit different buckets. We say, what do I love doing and I'm good at?
There you go.
What am I good at but don't really like that much? And then, like, what am I not good at all and hate?
Right.
So it's also a level of, hey, because if you're, what do they call it? If you're I always think of the, at the airport, those little walkways that are accelerated. When you're in your lane or in your zone, when you're operating in your core excellence, like how your brain processes and does things, then you can do things 10 times faster, more efficiently, and better than most people. Whereas someone else is really struggling to try to do that task, right? So there's also a love-hate relationship with what you're doing, and burnout comes from that too. You're doing something you don't love for too long. And so I think if you were to cross those two things, like what are the actual dollar tasks, like your money-making tasks, but also what are you good at and what drains you, that's kind of ties into the knowing yourself part. And then you're going to start getting somewhere. Then you're going to start to see that there is no blueprint to follow. You can't just everyone used to tell me, hire acquisitions person first because you've got to get them under contract. That was the worst move I ever did.
Really?
Yeah, then Gary Harper actually told me, he goes, no, every time I start a new company, I hire an integrator no matter what first. Someone who's like operational, process driven, because they can start to sit down and process everything that we're doing. Anything repeatable, document it. It takes 2 seconds.
Right.
Put on Screencast-O-Matic and put it up, you know? And I realized that was my missing piece, and I was struggling for so long because I never thought that way. I was like, oh, I do need someone to do that. I hate doing it. I have to pause what I'm really good at to sit down and like force myself to get to the place to do the things that I shouldn't even be doing, because I don't think I have enough money or anything like that. But sometimes you just need someone who's your other half. So if you are that integrator type, maybe you do need someone who's more of a visionary who can set the pace for your company. But not everyone's a CEO.
Right.
Like they just aren't. But for some reason, we're stuck in this mindset that we have to be it's an ego thing, you know? Got to be the CEO.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I had another podcast guest on, and he and his partner own a very successful storm restoration company, huge. And his partner knew everything about the business. He did not. He came from a different background. And when they got together, you know, we're 50-50 partners, but the one guy, the visionary, he's kind of the lead. He's the lead. The other guy, at the beginning, I think that was hard for him. And visionary says to integrator, well, do you want to be right or do you want to be rich?
It's true.
And that's on the money. I tell my people all the time, I don't care. We're not trying to win arguments around here. We're trying to collect checks. So I don't care who thinks they're right in the end. Make the other party feel like, you know, feel a certain way, feel like they're right, feel like they're winning, and then collect the check and we move on, and that's how we win.
I like that you brought that up. There's I don't know if you've ever read Think Again by Adam Grant.
I haven't.
Excellent read, especially for nowadays. And we talk about this all the time too. What does healthy conflict look like? And Adam Grant phrases it a really great way. He says there's He gives examples from, you know, the Wright brothers, how they created the propeller and how they argued for like a year over how to build this propeller. And they were both trying to be scientists, but they spent more time arguing for why their way was right rather than try to see what the other person was trying to create. Anyway, it took him like a year or something, but his point in saying it, they actually realized both of them were right. And they had to put their ideas together and create a propeller that had never been created yet by putting both of them, because nothing was designed to do what they wanted it to do. If all of us are out here doing this, so there's some people who follow this pathway to just say, well, I want to recreate that and I want that, so I'm just going to do exactly what that other person did.
Right.
And that's, you've got all your gurus out here mimicking this. I learned very quickly, I was like, I actually don't want to do it how anyone is doing it, because I'm unique in my own mind and my own capabilities, and I want to figure out what the niche is that's going to work for me. So anyway, we talk about the people that we hire or that we partner with. You really want to seek somebody who is going to give you healthy conflict and opposition, where it's task conflict, not relational conflict, right? And that's so important, because you're not making it personal, and it's valuing the differences in somebody. This is why, like, my network now that I have in the kind of business field, it's funny because we all walk around and we'll be like, what's your predictive index type? Like, I can tell you're the opposite of me, you know? And it's cool because we celebrate that difference. And I just think it's not talked about enough. Everyone's trying to fill that position, or maybe it's just someone that you want to work with. They're my friend. I want to work with them. And you're like, oh, have fun with that, because that's probably not going to end out very well. So,
no doubt.
You know, and then again, you've got also trying to create your like organizational chart in your business. You've got people in leadership. And then you've got people that are really in operations, and how you relate and grow your team to where everyone's working together and there's a respect level is so hard. You also have to know the people that are looking over those types, and you need certain types to manage certain types, you know? So
yeah, absolutely.
I think that's why I've been really heavy on, hey, I test every single person I hire in predictive index, because I just want to know, like, are you sitting in a seat that you should be sitting in? Like, do you know yourself? Or do you just want a job? And I think that part of our goal, or part of our mission as entrepreneurs and leaders, is to help people get to the right seat at the right time.
Right.
You know, so there's a lot of moving parts in that, I think, in that aspect.
Have you ever hired someone that was just a fit culturally, had a great mindset, a great outlook, a great attitude, a great work ethic, but maybe they didn't fit that seat perfectly for the exact thing you needed, but you hired them anyways and maybe designed a position around their skill set? Have you ever done that?
You know, I don't know if I've really had anything that specific. I can say one of my virtual assistants, actually, who's been with me for about 2.5 years, she's evolved tremendously. So I created a position for her.
Nice.
So I moved her out of being an assistant to really being in leadership with us. And she actually trains all of my VAs, does all of our processing, sits on the finance side too. It's crazy. It's I feel like VAs can do so much when you get to know them and when you train them right. So she's probably the only one I've created a position for. And my mentors were like, I've never even heard of that position. It's like a process managing position where she's not quite like a COO or operations manager, but she is holding the processes accountable. So she's almost like my quality check girl.
Gotcha.
So that was actually, and it's been phenomenal because she keeps me in check. I'll literally get emails that say, ma'am, you're not doing this correctly. Because I said, this is how we're going to do it. And I don't follow it. And she holds me accountable, which I love. I was like, I'm not immune to it. I have to function within the system too. So I'd say that's probably the only time I've done that.
That's very cool. I think the hardest, like you said, the hardest thing to do is to build that team culture. Everybody talks about it. It's
tough.
It's a big buzz, industry buzz. Whether it's the real estate investing industry or the storm restoration industry, it doesn't really matter. I mean, if sales are involved, you've got to have a culture where people will help each other, like we all win when we all win type of thing. But that takes a certain type of person, right? A lot of times your rock star types are not the type that integrate into a team well, cover for someone else, do something that's inconvenient and maybe not immediately profitable for them because it's helping the collective.
Yeah.
I'm not turning into a communist here. I'm just saying as a team,
you have to have the team.
We either win together or we lose together.
It's kind of like, so I'll use the example of my company because we handle, we're literally from executed contract to close. We're in charge. We're the boss. We talk to all the parties. We communicate. We make sure everything's on track. I've been able to scale it because I have a team culture on the backside. So most people hire one person to do that. They're just the transaction coordinator. They're going to cap out, promise you. They're going to cap out at about 20 to 30 deals. Escrow officers are the same at title, right? They only do 40 a month is average expectation closings. So at one point, I think I was handling about 150 transactions trying to cap myself out. How much can I do if I had the right teamwork on the backside? And so we realized we kind of created an ecosystem to where every TC has 2 assistants on the backside that you never know about that are actually doing quite a bit, which frees that person to do a couple of things really well and be client facing. So anyway, I say that because can you imagine trying to get a team of 8 to work together seamlessly on files that you need a lot of information on? You've got to be in those files to know what's going on.
Right.
And all virtual. So if you don't have that culture there, this is my expectation. When someone puts a question in here, I expect you to answer it in that avenue in 10 minutes, type of deal. So it is really hard to do. And people have asked how we've been able to scale like that. And I said, it's honestly my team. My team is solid. Yesterday, my operations manager said to me, I'm really proud of the fact that you didn't know that 2 of our assistants weren't even working today. And I was like, what? I said, what? We had 20 closings in 2 days. I said, are you serious? She said, yeah, I'm very proud of that. So she said, and she said one had a migraine, the other one's having internet issues, and we've only had one assistant operating, and we're down a TC, and we're still doing more volume than we've ever done. So it's just kind of goes to show what you can do if you focus on that.
Right.
This is something that's been ingrained in me. You have to have your core values. Anytime I hire, I tell people these core values, and I'm willing to fire you if you violate them at all. One time violated, you're out. My clients, same thing. If you don't communicate with me, it's one of my core values, I will fire you.
Communication is one of mine too.
Huge. I mean, the world goes around on communication. Yeah. I mean, it's an age-old issue.
A deal can live or die depending on how good the communication is or is not.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't matter if it's good news or bad news or indifferent news.
It doesn't.
Get it communicated immediately.
I use this example. You go to a restaurant and they're slammed, okay? You're sitting down there and you're watching your server walk back and forth and not acknowledge you. How irate are you getting by the minute? Something as simple as a server that comes back and says, hey, welcome. I'm just going to go do a couple of things. I will be right back. Mm-hmm. You're probably going to be able to wait like exponentially longer because it's acknowledgement. So to your point, yeah, good news, bad news, I don't care. Just communicate. So it's like people forget that. They're on the go so much. Got to get the next deal. Got to do this and this. They're not nurturing it. And they're like, I just don't want to deal with it. Great. Hire someone to do it because contracts are great or whatever you're doing. You know, your service is great. But if you cannot, like if you're not communicating with someone, and same thing too with clients, like I tell them, if you do not answer my call within 24 hours, I'm calling you because there's a problem, or I'm calling you because I need you to advise on a situation, or I need to let you know of a problem, like your seller's pulling out or something, and they don't pick up the phone, I'm out. Like, I can't care about your deals more than you do. Yeah. I mean, I've had people not show up to the closing table. Wow. For a week. Just disappear.
What's going on with that?
It's wild to me. It's so, I think people just get sidetracked on everything else in their business. They don't understand the simple thing of like closing your deals matters.
Right.
You know, you can have, and honestly, just give an example. Like, I think an average fall through rate on contracts for a wholesaler is about 25%. That's anything you get under contract, about 25% is going to fall through.
Really?
Some are a lot higher than that, depending on how much volume you get. We've been able to like make that rate better because, you know, we come in and we communicate with people who don't know what's going on. They just want to know, hey, what's my next step? I don't know. And they are under this impression that they can close in 5 days. No, we actually have to get a title commitment, and that can take 7 to 14 days. And, oh, okay. And then, you know, just communicating that helps them through that process. But most of these guys are just on the go, get the deal, I'm out. So anyway, yeah, same thing for me. It's like communication. If it's not happening, you're dead in the water.
Yeah. I met with a pro who I've worked with, it's a little bit technical, but for several years. And he works in the insurance claim industry as a public adjuster. So what a public adjuster does is they work for the policyholder. Mm-hmm. They're actually a private adjuster. They're working for the policyholder against the carrier. Make sure the policyholder gets treated fairly. And he's going to law school. And the reason why is not because he's not making great money. He's making crazy money doing what he's doing. But he can't find, he's like, if I had the attorney that I'm going to be, I'd stay a public adjuster. And then I'd send all my cases to said attorney. But I can't find the attorney that I'm going to be. So you kind of had the same thing happen. You saw a niche. You saw something, a demand that was not being filled. And you stepped into that void. Walk us through stem to stern, front to back, side to side. What does a transaction coordinator do?
We heard cats,
yeah,
to put it simply.
Exactly.
So a transaction coordinator can actually, you can kind of design this role to begin at different points in time. So what we do, we've streamlined the process. What we do is the second you get it signed, the contract signed, it comes into my hands or my team's hands. We are the ones that are going to open title, give next steps to your seller, communicate with them, get additional docs, get information, read the title commitment. Some title companies aren't great at that. They are just going to throw it at you and you're like, what does this mean? So we are very versed in like, okay, we see an affidavit's needed. We're going to handle it. So we kind of take a lot of that control out of the title company. My company does, because most of investors, the reason you make money is because you're solving problems. So we help. We kind of pride ourselves on being problem solvers. Because a lot of investors, we probably know more about real estate than most investors because we see so many issues and things. And then you have to deal with different cities and boroughs and state laws and all sorts of stuff. So we help with all of that stuff. And then we just make sure everyone is organized and on the same page and closing and wires are in. And we just basically line it up. And the title companies lean on us heavily, because they get so busy. I feel like they're a little bit more archaic in how they operate. And so they get capped out pretty quickly. And when they're capped out, guess whose deals are going to the bottom of the pile? The problem deals. So so that's what we do with investors. Most transaction coordinators work with realtors, like your traditional realtors. So most of the TCs you're going to find out there are trained and versed to be compliance checks, make sure that they're meeting broker requirements. And these deals are pretty streamlined because your typical sellers and buyers with realtors are going to be normal people, that don't have bankruptcies, foreclosures, and they're not wacky. So it's an easier job. For us, we have to be super flexible, super detail oriented, and solve all the problems. So it's a completely different type of profile, I think. So some TCs actually help put the contracts together. Like, hey, Casey, we've got a deal. Seller's ready to sign. Can you send out a DocuSign and prep the agreement? We don't do that because most people have acquisitions teams that are going to do that, and time is of the essence. Mm-hmm. So we do not do that, and I refuse to do it because of the timing. But once it's executed and it comes in my hands, we'll do everything in between. So if there are amendments or things that need to be signed, we will help write them, send them. We'll watch closing dates, option periods, basically anything that you've put down and how you want your deal to go. We're going to make sure everyone's on the same page.
Yeah, I mean, you're connecting point A to point B, and just making sure that everything happens smoothly.
While everyone is running around like crazy, doing different things.
No doubt.
And it's interesting, too, because we've kind of unexpectedly become consultants for investment teams because we've worked with so many companies. So I've worked with investors doing 1 to 2 deals a month, and I think our highest was closing. I think by the time they brought it in-house, they went up to about 35 a month. So we can help you get efficient. And I remember working with them in the beginning and saying, hey, if you got these seller info sheets, filled out correctly, or let's add an authorization, little things that we can add to the packet on the front side to help things go smoothly. That's what we started doing. People would call us, hey, we want to get this under contract, but we know that there's a child support lien. Oh, I can get that off. No problem. Is it with the attorney general? Great. Go ahead and contract it. I'll get that off. So we kind of helped guide people. They would call me before they contracted and say, hey, there's a will, but this is the situation and we can't find so-and-so. It's like we kind of were hedging against the bet that we could get it done, and we just kind of consulted them. So now when we onboard somebody, we kind of say, hey, walk us through how you're doing this now, and then we're going to tell you how it should be. Because you can be more efficient. So we try to find the bottlenecks. Is it your title company? Do you need better title? Because we know what title should do and be. And we can kind of monitor that stuff. So we kind of are, the coach in that whole area. So we're not just sitting here as admins being told what to do, sitting on our hands. We're proactively thinking through what is going to be needed. And that makes us a little bit different.
Well, you said earlier that you didn't really like wholesaling because you felt like it was super transactional. What you just explained is the outlook of someone who's trying to bring value to an interchange, right?
Yeah.
You're providing a consulting or a coaching service, and you're probably not charging for it. You're just helping these folks out, and that's part of why they like you and continue to use your service, right?
Yeah.
But the bringing value to every interchange, that's one of my core values as well. So whenever I come to help you, if you're a homeowner and you have damage to your home, or your property owner, you have damage to your commercial building, I'm not there to get a deal signed.
Yeah.
I'm there to lay out for you all of your options so you can make the best decision for you. Mm-hmm. And we feel like when we do that, we make someone feel like they're cared about and like they're safe and like they can lean on us, right? And that's where the real value comes from. Is that starting to pay dividends for you because you've got repeat clients where maybe your competition, which it doesn't sound like there is a lot, but maybe your competition can't compete at that level because of the value that you guys bring, because of the experience that you've gained?
Well, that's what we're working on. It's funny. I always said the first year was proving the concept. Right. So I did it myself with an assistant, and I'm not the best transaction coordinator. Trust me, I'm a sales visionary type, but I can sit and figure it out. And I maxed myself out. And I was like, well, if I'm not the best at this and I can do this, then someone else can do, it helped me gauge my expectation. I had several investors tell me it would work. We're just going to hire in-house. And I was like, okay. Well, they're going to get capped out and exhausted at 20 to 30 deals. So if you want to grow, now you're going to have to hire another one. And then your fee and then your admin cost just went from $30,000 to $60,000 a year, just like that. Mm-hmm. Things like that. Then you got to train them. How good are you at this one operational piece of your business when you're all salespeople.
Right.
And they're like, oh my God, you're right. I don't want to do that. I don't even know how to do that. So most of my clients are just not really versed in this part. Maybe they sat in the seat a little while. So I come in and say, hey, I've closed hundreds of deals, like 800, 900 plus deals. I've seen a thing or two. Not only do I know that side of it, I'm also working with very large companies. Most people don't know. Like, I mean, we've got clients in New York, Florida, I mean, all over the place that are doing pretty decent volume, 5 to 15 easy. And we're helping them expand. So I kind of treat it as a position, say, why, this is the easiest part to outsource. It's the easiest one because you don't have to be there. It's paperwork at your computer, etc. And you don't have to train us. So yeah, we're kind of positioning ourselves that way and saying we want to start helping you understand what kind of issues you're going to run into with your deals. But then the other half, again, is helping you understand how to process this better. How can we get your acquisition guys to do better? Because some of these acquisition guys are like so excited about getting the deal, they forget to vet the deal. Mm-hmm. And then they're super upset when we can't close it, you know? So I think some people go after the low hanging fruit or just throw it at the wall. So we actually started doing a couple of things differently to kind of weed people out. We started charging termination fees. So you can't just give us a file and not be charged for it.
Good
and that's
for you.
been incredibly like one of the best things we could have done because now people aren't throwing stuff at the wall. Yeah. And we had a lot of people asking us to do like pre-check work. Can you the payoff just so we know? We're like, sure, for a fee. Like we'll vet your file for a fee. Yeah. And we've noticed that it kind of weeded out the less serious people. And I hate saying this, but it is true. Like Mike Hambright told me this. He's like, I just got tired of working with broke people. You know, like I want to work with people that really have a vision to grow and do well, and not just they want to have good quality in their product, I guess, for lack of better terms. And some of these guys are just kind of going after the gurus and they're missing so many pieces. It's just a mess. Yeah. They just aren't really doing much.
You mentioned how archaic and primitive title is and still is, even though they've, made a lot of advancements over the last year because of COVID. Mm-hmm. Do you see like blockchain or something like that helping streamline title so it can become more technologically advanced and more convenient and faster and leaner?
I've seen a couple of changes, and I don't know. I think the biggest ones have been being more accommodating virtual, so notary or online notary services, right? So that we can do it through the computer now without having to be in person. So some are getting remote online notarization licenses, because there's a few things you have to do to get that, which has been a huge game changer. Second is the technology on how they process their files, because a lot of them did it in office, right? Well, they stopped coming to the offices last year, so they had to bring everything home and figure out how to streamline the digital side. We're working with the title company in Nashville called Blueprint Title. They're based in Nashville, but they're nationwide. They have a vision like I have a vision. 100% virtual, nationwide, streamline this process, investor friendly. There's no reason you need to be in-house. So we're kind of partnering with them, and they've built some technology where we have logins. Some title companies are doing that where they have like Qualia or something that you can log in and see the status of something, verify info, et cetera, et cetera. But this one's interesting in that it has a tracker, like we can see exactly what's happening. And they've streamlined some communication to lower on email back and forth so everyone can be on the same page and it's all on a dashboard. So I've seen things like that. Even just technology and getting earnest money to you, like using apps or, things like that. So there's a lot of stuff that's been helpful, but they're still a little behind on a lot of things.
Right. You said that you're a sales and visionary type. Mm-hmm. When did you realize that you liked sales? Because people really do fall into two categories. They do. Like when I talk to people about, hey, I got an awesome opportunity here, a lot of money to be earned. Well, what is it doing? Oh, well, sales is part of it. There are people who just want absolutely nothing to do with that. Yeah.
What's funny is I didn't realize who I was for a long time. Like it took me quite a few years. I would say everyone's in sales whether they realize it or not. Like, you have to sell yourself every day.
That's right. If you don't think you're in sales, that means you're doing a really poor job of selling yourself.
It's true. It's like the people that are in the back of the room or not wanting to sit at the table or network. So many people ask me, they're like, how did you learn so much about real estate so fast? And how do I know you? And I was like, I don't know. I just talk to people. I mean, I don't know. I just ask questions and talk to people, and you'd be surprised at how far you can get. But anyway, when it comes to sales, it's actually my ex-husband who one day was like, I think you'd be really good in sales, because I had moved to Dallas and I used to be a media analyst. It's a long story. It's a whole nother life. But I sat with very high level people all the time, in Davos and World Economic Forum. And I had a mentor that really pushed me to kind of put myself out there. And so I guess I was kind of evolving into it at a young age. And they said, I think you'd be good at sales. You should apply for the sales job at this construction company that does windows and siding. And I was like, all right, whatever. I'll go take the interview. Anyway, they offered me the job and I ended up being top sales. But I remember. Really? I remember.
You want a job?
I love it. And we were one call closers.
Awesome.
So, it's a hard job to do that. So
it really is.
It's hard. And people don't realize if you don't close that deal, it's a 1% chance of them calling you back in that field, like for that anyway. So anyway, I remember the guys trying to train me. And they're like completely different guys, like hard hitters, aggressive, all that kind of stuff. And I was like, I was so frustrated because I was trying to mimic them. I finally told them, because they had this thing, if you can't close the deal, you better get on the phone, step outside and get on the phone with me. Or if you leave that house without calling me, then that's on you. So we had this thing with our managers. I finally told them, I said, I need you all to leave me alone and don't talk to me. And I'm going to do what I'm going to find my own groove and figure out how I can talk to people. And just give me 30 days to do it my way. I don't think I called our manager for 6 months. I just was closing out, and I found my niche. I found what was good for me, what worked for me. I'm a hard close, but you don't know what's happening. Yeah. And women are really good at that.
Oh, yeah.
So that's actually how I started learning. I'm actually pretty good at this. And then I started really training, and we would do a lot of the guys and I would just sit back and forth, and we would literally just get into conversations about objections. We would just be they would walk up to me and be like, he said, I got to think about it. And I'm like, what is it that's going to be the deciding factor for you? Little things like that. We just start going back and forth all day, every day. That's all we did. So anyway, when it came to real estate, we eventually were like, we could sell the whole house. We were just doing part of the house. So when it came to real estate, you're knocking on doors. It's cold calls. It's a little bit different because we had warm leads that we went to appointments to, and we were so used to being in people's houses, we thought, well, this is a natural transition. So I kind of figured out, well, I'm already good at the window side. So what was interesting about real estate, and this is a mistake so many people make, they're just asking to buy a house. Like, hey, can I just buy your house? I'm like, and then they're shocked when they tell them no or get angry or something like that. And I said, well, have you earned the right to ask to buy their house? I used to have to sit in a 4-hour presentation before I got that sale. I was building rapport and things like that, and there's no way to rush it. And everyone just wants to rush and do it. So I kind of found that, to your point earlier about solving the problems, you're not going there for a sale. You're going there, I'm first going to see if I can assist and solve your problem. Real estate's one of those things too. You have to not only learn people and how to talk to them and know the objections, but you have to earn the right to ask. Sure. And I'm a super hands off. I'll be like, hey, there's 13 ways you can stop a foreclosure. Have you tried this, this, and this? Let them take you down the list. Well, it sounds like you could do it this way, but you need to make sure it's right. And then they're begging you to solve their problem because you've got the knowledge to do it. So anyway, going off on a total tangent, but I think I realized that, and I didn't know anything about brain types at the time, right? You're just kind of doing what you're used to doing, but I got such a high off of it. And then there's other people who are like, I hate this so much. And I was like, really? It's so exciting when you get that sale. And that's when I had that feeling, all the guys were like, oh, you're a salesperson, because there's something wrong with us. So it's like a hunt or something that we need, which is funny and ironic that I run a transaction company, because everyone came to me and said, why are you in transactions? And I was like, there's a need for it.
Yeah. Yeah. Sales is one of those things where, it takes every mental faculty that you have to read the person, listen to them, parrot back to them what they're saying, and then weave some value in there, create the rapport, notice that painting on the wall. Oh, you're from there, I'm from there, boom, boom,
all
boom,
at the
boom.
same time. You got to be fast.
Yeah, you're doing it all. You're totally engaged. It's exhausting, but it is very exciting.
Yeah.
When you learn to sell, you learn a life skill nobody can take from you. Because really good salespeople will always be in high demand. You could go anywhere in the world, and if you can sell, I don't care if it's a Lambo or a roof or siding or real estate, you got a job, man.
That is absolutely true.
And probably a job with pretty good flexibility and really good pay.
Yeah.
Did you have to overcome some fear, like fear of rejection? And what was that? What was that like?
I don't know if it was fear of rejection. I'm kind of like, if you read my personality profile, it says undaunted by failure. So I don't think that like fits me, but it was not trusting myself enough, I think, was my biggest issue, because that's why I told the guys, leave me alone. Let me do this. I need to trust myself. I need to know that I could read the room and not be like, well, this is how they did it, and I'm going to mimic it that way. So I think I had to overcome, I mean, you're all commissions based when you're in sales, right? So you got to be hungry. But you also have to have a team that sets you up for success. So because you can't be like doing everything. So anyway, I think the biggest part was really just overcoming all the various types of objections in people and like honing that skill. Because you can do a lot naturally, but the good ones have read like Grant Cardone's survival guide 50 million times, right? Like, I think that you really hone in on picking up on cues when people don't know they're doing it. And that to me was overwhelming, because I'd be like, man, I cannot figure out this person. I would like dwell on it, why I couldn't sell that person. And then I realized, well, I'm just trying to do the same thing with the same person. And then you kind of start to learn to adjust, different ways. So I think I just overcame the fear of being able to catch on quickly and adapt quickly, but it was actually kind of just already ingrained in me. And I realized I'm actually really good at that side of things. Now It's just the details of the sale, like having someone make a decision for tens of thousands of dollars in one go, that's intimidating. Right? You think you kind of talk yourself off the ledge. You're like, I'm gonna give them a discount, because we had the ability to discount it as much or as little in a zone, and our commission rate was based on that. So you have a lot of leeway, right?
Sure.
So I was always scared to ask for that high price, because I wanted the sale more than the money. And then once I mastered that, then the next step was, okay, well, how do I get this at a higher price? So I think that was probably the biggest thing I had to deal with.
Did it take you a while to figure out that some of the best deals you could ever close are the deals that you didn't close because the client they weren't somebody who maybe knew, like, and trusted you, or they weren't someone maybe who you shared values with, or maybe they were only looking for a good deal or only looking for a cheap price? Do you know who Jack Canfield is? So he has a saying, SW, 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 SW. Some will, some won't. So what? Someone's waiting. So it doesn't matter. If you don't want what I'm here to help you with, that's cool. I got enough confidence in what I bring to the table that I'm taking this to the next table. Like
the takeaway.
Almost like speed dating.
Yeah.
Right? Like take it or it's gone. But that takes a lot of confidence.
Oh, yeah.
But the walking away from a client where it's not going to be a good relationship, that took me as a contractor, because I grew up, I've been a contractor since I was 17. So I've grown up doing this. That was really hard for me because I'm a hustler. I want every deal. If I put an hour in, I want that deal.
Naturally.
Yeah. I mean, was that a difficult thing for you?
Man, the takeaway is one of the hardest closes. And I remember, it's funny you bring that up, because I remember going, it does, because you've got to have a confidence in you. I remember going to one of my managers and be like, I don't understand how to do the takeaway. Like, I'm not processing when to do it. And they gave me the best tip ever. They said, oh, you got to set that shit up in the beginning. Like, you got to subtly start priming them for the takeaway. It's kind of, you're literally taking away up front. And they don't even know it's happening, so that at the end, when you're like, hey, listen, I understand where you're coming from, and I get if we're not a good fit, and walk away. And I realized that I wasn't earning the right even to do the takeaway. I'm really big on earning the right, because you have to set yourself up. So that's one of the hardest things I learned, the last thing. But what I really like about that too is when you can bring that into sales, and then when you have your own company, the takeaway is not like it happens all the time. Like you do have to like respect yourself enough to know what your value is and not allow someone to take that away from you. Ryan and I were literally just talking about that. You get to a point where like, did I just screw that up? Because that's a big contract. They're closing a lot of deals, or they have a good reputation and they could possibly refer me out. And I'm like, you know what? It's not worth the abuse of me or my team. And I'm okay taking that away. And that was like, I don't think if I had that experience in sales, I would have the confidence to do it as an owner. But I think it's probably one of the biggest skill sets you can learn. Because it applies in so many different ways.
It does, man. And it does take this confidence. And it's not fake confidence. It's not confidence that you get by watching YouTube videos or reading a book. It's confidence that is forged in the fire of the living room, man. Right?
You got to be okay with yourself.
Yeah, I'm sitting
like,
here.
You do.
I told you this thing's going to expire if I walk out the door. When I leave today, this deal expires.
Yeah.
And I want your business, and we're the best. We're the best contractor
I've
for the business.
had people come back where I've been like, hey, this is not working for me, and it's not really worth it. And they were high volume, and it was really rocking. I've had several come back to me and say, hey, what do we need to do to work with you? We know you're the best, or they thought they could do it better, and then they come back to me. Now the power is in your hands, right? So if they left, they left. Let them leave. They're not going to affect your business if you're doing things right, and you've got the reputation in the network. You don't need to scrap for those types of people. And if they are worth it and good and willing to work on your standards or your values, they're going to come back and they're going to be like, hey, listen, we screwed up.
Yeah.
Like big time. I've had it happen a ton of times. I mean, I think
that's awesome.
It takes a lot though. I'll tell you, it's nerve-wracking.
I bet it does. You said when you were a media analyst that you had a mentor that was pushing you to put yourself out there. At what age or what stage in your career did you realize the value of coaching and mentoring? Because I'm 42, and it's been a real challenge for me to it has nothing to do with my pride or ego. I'll reach out to people who are way more successful than me and get a sit down with them and just pick their brain. I got no problem. And if they don't want to talk to me, I don't really take it personally. I get it. Maybe if I was like off the chart successful, I wouldn't have time for the little guy, but it also inspires me that when people reach out to me, and they do, I take time that doesn't benefit me immediately right there.
Yeah.
But coaching, I've heard it explained, just compresses time. So if you're trying to get from point A to point B, the speed with which you arrive at point B, that is really the metric by which your success is measured.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I earned $100 million by the time I was 40 and I retired. Right? I mean, that's foreign to a lot of people. What does it take to get from point A to point B? Well, if I'm just learning, trial and error, I'm going to learn a lot, and that's awesome. And that experience, no one can take that away from me.
Yeah.
But what if I'd be able to remove all the error and just do trial, success? Point A and point B would be smashing into each other.
Yeah.
When did the mentoring coaching thing, when did it dawn on you that this has value, or was it something that just sort of happened organically to begin with?
It kind of happened organically, to be honest. I call it standing on the shoulders of giants. It happened. I was in grad school in Boston. I fun fact, a lot of people don't know, I have like a dual master's in politics and international relations. I don't tell people that much because because it's my favorite. People walk up to me, they'll start talking politics like, oh, this must be so boring, Casey. I'm like, you're right. So yeah, it's because I was in that world I burned out on that world pretty quickly because I was on the media side. So what happened was I was in grad school and I was really fascinated with how I had gone backpacking prior to grad school, about 7 months on the road, Eastern Europe, Asia, all that sort of stuff. Fun adventure, lots of stories. But I interned for this journalism center in Moldova, of all places. Don't ask me how I got there. I don't know how I get anywhere, but
I won't ask.
I closed my eyes and pointed on a map, and that's where I ended up. But it was during re-elections in 2009 when the Communist Party got reelected. So I felt like I got my first taste of mentorship by volunteering for them, because I fell into this world where we brought over all these journalists from the European Union to bring awareness of a situation. And so anyway, I was kind of thinking about going into journalism. And so all these seasoned journalists came in, and I just happened to be in charge of them. And I was just sort of like thrown into the fire. And I was watching them. So I was just kind of observing and watching them. And a couple of them, one of them, who's actually from Portugal, for some reason, we just clicked. And we talked a ton about stuff. And he won an award off of being there from a story that he had written, because I allowed him to rent a car and go to a part of this country that is completely closed down and very difficult to get to. But I told him I'm not bailing him out of prison. So I let him go with the translator. And anyway, long story short, rabbit hole here, but there's a point to it. He came back and anyway, he ended up writing me a recommendation into grad school for it, like a kind of trade-off. So it was interesting. I was just I think I was 24 at the time. And I was young, didn't know a lot, but I could bring him value by arranging something for him. So I think that everyone has either time, money, or knowledge. Even when you're starting out, you just got to find out where you fit. And I just fell into that, and he returned the favor, which got me into a very small program in graduate school. And then my first boss for this media company came to give a presentation, was looking for interns. So I went to work for free for his company as an analyst, literally listening and reading the news and turning it into code. Based on a methodology. And then we would pull that data and kind of make predictions about things, how people respond to news, things like that. So I kind of just humbly volunteered my time in both scenarios and ended up getting mentorship back. I think just because I was willing to put myself in the most uncomfortable position ever, not knowing anything about it. So that's how I stumbled into it. And I think people recognize that. So I think if you've got a drive or an interest in something and you just ask questions, people are going to stop and think, wow, people don't really ask those questions. And they're going to take to you naturally. So it completely was by accident, just by the nature that I ask 1 million questions all the time. I've been like that since I was a kid. Some people really hate that, by the way.
Yeah, but a lot of people, especially if they're high level, high performers, they like it when people ask them.
I do.
And they also understand the value in teaching something. Mm-hmm. So when you know something, that's great, but you could always be sharpening your knowledge, and especially your experiential feel of that knowledge. When you teach it to someone, you coach someone through it, it does something to your own experience, your own level of just proficiency with that skill. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people, when you do ask them questions, they will have a coffee with you.
If they're a good leader.
Oh, well, yes.
If they're a really good leader, they're going to empower you.
For sure.
I learned this lesson recently.
The hard way.
I got a talking to.
Like. Oh, really?
It kind of fits into this. So I was in Nashville last week with my business mentors, a Sharper group, and we had a situation where someone didn't show up to work. And I have a new operations manager. She's only been with me about 4 months, and she's not as versed in investors as I am. So I, without thinking and being the problem solver I am, jumped right back in, took control, picked up the phone, and took over everything. That was a mistake. I shouldn't have done that. I asked the question, and my whole team, like Gary and Eddie and a few other people, were like, Casey, that's not leadership. And I was like, what do you mean? I'm not I'm going to get my hands dirty and I'm going to hop back in. And he goes, yes, but what are they learning by you solving the problem? And I was like, oh, dang, you're right. They said leading by managing is one thing and leading by empowerment is another. And so I screwed up. I really screwed up. And what I should have done, and my operations manager was like, I was terrified. I didn't know what to do. And I'm not going to lie. I knew I couldn't do what you could do. But at the same time, I felt guilty because my sole job is to keep you out of operations. So we had this moment of truth where we looked at each other and I said, I made a mistake and stepped back. I should have sat down. And Emily's like, I should have said, give me 15 minutes, Casey. Give me 15 minutes before you rock the boat. And I was like, I said, that would have been helpful for me. So she led me by telling me what she needed. And I need to lead by letting them know, empowering them. So when someone comes to me with a problem, and this happens all the time with my clients, they'll call me, they'll completely sideswipe her and call me. And what I need to do is say, you need to call Emily and have that conversation with her.
That's her department.
It's your department. If I don't do that, I'm not doing my team. I'm not leading. I'm not empowering them to do that. So I kind of circles back to the people like who, if you ask the questions, I've fired people for not asking me questions because I know that this is a steep learning curve. And if you're not asking questions, then you're not engaged. You're not honest about what you don't know. And that happened with one of my TCs that ended up taking a different job. We asked her 5 million times, hey, what do you need? I know you don't know everything about this. No, everything's fine. Got it. And then I got into her files and realized, holy shit, these things are not being handled.
Hey, it's the yes men you got to watch out for.
100%.
It's the, oh, no, yeah, I got it. Everything's fine. You got to watch those people like a hawk. That's a huge red flag for me. I mean, I've been burned so bad by yes men.
Yep.
Where I get this like comfort level of, oh, he's got it. Mm-hmm. Oh, he's got it. And I am paranoid as fuck that if I take my eye off the ball, we're losing. Not just today, but we're losing the game. Mm-hmm. We're going out of business. And I'm going to be under an overpass begging for change, right? Mm-hmm. Those yes men, man, that shit pisses me off so much because I'm very direct. Not like coarse and abrasive and acerbic, but I'm just, hey, where are we at? How we doing? How's your pipeline looking? Or do you have any questions? Yeah. I'm available, right? I can't get a hold of my boss. I can't get a hold of the owner. Mm-hmm. I mean, we're all here. All my managers are always here. So when you have a problem, you don't communicate it to me, and then we ask you specifically, are you okay? And you say yes. Yes, that's a fireable offense. That's also very dishonest. And that's a core value. I'm sure it is for you too. Mm-hmm. You said something, kind of a buzz phrase about 5-10 minutes ago, comfortable being uncomfortable or outside of your comfort zone. And again, the most successful people are the people who bump up and break through their comfort zone maybe every day, right? Yeah. Maybe it is an introvert who's supposed to be the leader, and he's got to break through his shell and be more gregarious or charismatic or whatever. Do you consciously, like almost daily, as part of maybe your personal discipline, work on putting yourself in uncomfortable situations?
I feel like I just do it. I don't know what's wrong with me. Like I have something wrong in my head.
No.
I actually, truthfully, if you asked my parents what I was like as a kid, they'd be like, she was quiet, didn't talk to anyone. I would sit in a corner and read. I was so uncomfortable with people. I wouldn't let anyone touch me. I was just like, I would just read in my closet. And then I went to church camp and everyone said, my dad was like, you just were this different person. You just flowered. And I put myself in the uncomfortable position of going to camp. I'm like, oh God, I got to talk to people and girls and all this crap. Yeah. And I don't know what happened, to be honest. I think I was just around the right people. I was around people that made me feel safe and that I could play with and be myself with. And so I think it was then that I realized I am introverted, but introversion's not liking or disliking people. It's just what drains you and doesn't drain you. And I get super drained by groups of people, but one-on-one, I'm all in. So I think putting myself in that uncomfortable position, I learned really young. My parents were great about pushing me to try new things and to ask questions all the time. My dad always said, no one's an expert. Ask the questions. The professor, everyone just ask. I used to ask my dad all the time, all these questions, and I'd go back home and there'd be a stack of literature on my bed. Well, I don't really know, but here's some stuff to read. So I think it's partially how I was just raised and pushed out of my comfort zone because I was like that. Now I'm getting to the point where being an adult is hard, y'all.
Yo.
I said it's uncomfortable being an adult. I mean, you'd realize how much you have to get up in the morning. And when COVID hit and I was going through personal stuff and it was just a clusterfuck. I remember someone asking me, what got you up out of bed every morning? What got you moving? Because that's uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. When there's a pandemic, you're building your own business, you're going through a personal thing. I was like, well, to be honest, it was just serving someone else. I was so focused because I'm a service-based industry. That it wasn't about me, it was about someone else, that I was naturally in the uncomfortable position because nobody was stepping up to the plate at that time. Everyone was scared of things. I said, well, this is something I can do and I can do well, so I'm just going to hone in on this. And so I kind of naturally I was like, this is uncomfortable. And then I kind of looked up and realized what we built. And people ask me that question of like being uncomfortable. I was like, I don't think I had a choice of being uncomfortable at that point.
Yeah.
It's just, what do you do when you feel that way? And what makes you keep going?
On your predictive index, how did you score on the patience vector?
Is that the D? That's the. See, I'm actually.
So I took the rocket fuel one, the Ming Wang rocket fuel one.
I don't know if I know. Is that the same?
Well, I think it's maybe. I mean, it's a predictive index. I mean, I think they're all.
Do you have like a? There's like
it
10 profiles or something?
Yeah, and it scores it scored me as visionary.
Yeah.
So my integrator score and my visionary score was higher, but my integrator score is high. So it sounds like you and I might test very similarly there. My patient, where I scored out there, was where this guy who analyzed my test said it was the highest he's ever seen, which means I can withstand anything, and I will never.
So you have high
quit.
patience or low patience?
High.
Yeah,
like
so that's
charts,
interesting that
like,
you put it that way.
You cannot make me tap out. I won't tap out. And I was going to ask you, because we started talking about COVID before the pod even went live. I mean, where do you get your resilience, your mindset, your outlook? Is that's not something that most of us are just born with. It's something that a lot of times trials and tribulations are what
experience.
They're what, like, they just instill it in you.
Yeah.
Like, that couldn't kill me, so I'm gonna go find something even meaner and see if it can kill me, because it can't.
It's I think, gosh, there was this like picture I saw today actually, and it was a guy that had like 10 knife wounds in him, and he was consoling another guy with one. Yeah. And he's like, hey man, it'll be okay.
Yeah. That
resonated with me, because it's often the people that have just been through enough to where, that's not going to kill me. I'm going to just, I've gotten food poisoning 5 times. I'll eat anything.
There you go.
like nothing could be as bad as that. I think it's
even
really
warm sushi.
I mean, I think that's how I got food poisoning the first time in Thailand, was something along those lines. Street food, it'll get you.
Oh yeah.
I think it's just the first step is, like we said, you got to make yourself uncomfortable or keep pushing, because you're responsible for you. Like, you're the only one that's responsible for you. And you can choose to be comfortable, and some people are okay that way. I remember my dad giving me some advice when I was young. I don't know, it was some friend of mine, and I was so annoyed that they just wanted to be at home all the time. And I was like, I want to go see the world and travel. And he goes, Casey, some people are okay with that. Like, they're just okay, and that's their role, and that's fine. And that's just how they're built. And I said, well, that's fine, but I don't want to be around those people. And he's like, well, go find your people then. And that's literally what I did. And so I think it's just part of me was just the journey of finding my people. And I think that something I realized in the last couple of years is it's really, our people are people that love the journey and the process more than the outcome. Like, right. I don't think we could have even fathomed the outcome of some of the stuff we've done, but we're not focused on that, where I think other people are. I just want to make X amount of money and get here and do this, and I am good. Well, yeah. I accomplished everything I said I was going to do by the time I hit college. So I was like, well, what do I do now? And I came from a very traditional background. Like, you go to college, you get married, this is what you do. Well, I've never really wanted kids. And I was like, oh, wait, I don't have to do that? Yeah. And I was like, wait a minute, I didn't have to go to graduate school or anything like that. And so I kind of started thinking, when I was like, well, what do I do now? Like, and that was one of those things where I think the visionary in me was just sort of like, well, what could I build or create? So I started just saying yes to things and seeing where it took me. And I mean, I've been in some weird places. Like, well,
that's a super male-dominated world that you were in, selling windows and siding.
I was in a male-dominated world in my media job too. In fact, I was in Frankfurt at Deutsche Bank. This is right before they got raided, if anyone knows their background. They were our client. We were doing reputation analysis for them in their media markets. And I remember walking into that building, and they wouldn't even let me upstairs. It was all guys. They wouldn't even let me upstairs. And my boss and the co-guy who ran it said, hey, 1 minute. And they went upstairs. He calls down and says, go up to the desk and get the badge right now. And I walked in, and I was like, okay. And we went upstairs, and he literally in front of the room said, I don't know why you wouldn't let this young lady up here. She's the one that did the data that we're presenting to you today. So take it away. And he led me in that way. But it was so male dominated everywhere I went. I've never not been in a male dominated space. And so I kind of pushed through it, but he was the one that pushed me to the table constantly. And he was like, hey, Casey, do you have any opinions? And I was like, oh God, like, it's intimidating. So when I got into like sales, I was like, fine. I was so used to it at that point. I mean, but it really did take somebody pushing me to the table and having the confidence to do it. And it wanes sometimes, but you just got to freaking grab it by the horns and go. I mean, you're not going to get respect by sitting back.
I saw a post that you made on one of your social media platforms about mansplaining.
I don't always open a can of worms.
You're in, so you work in a male dominated deal now, like that's this industry that you're in.
Yeah.
So that fearlessness that you've got that comes from having to do things that you didn't go to bed last night and go, I'm looking forward to that tomorrow. Like, we all have things, right? If you're an entrepreneur or a small business owner, you all have things that tomorrow, I don't really want to do that, but I got to do it. And you just do it. How do you overcome that ultimate objection, which is that kind of air of superiority that very insecure men seem to have with professional women?
Yeah, it's interesting because
you can get the job done. Why would someone give you shit? That doesn't make any sense. Aren't we all here to earn money?
You know, I've been thinking about it a lot because I was in this women investment group and there's like 14,000 in that group or something crazy. And it's so common that they post like, you know, what are they going to say when I walk in? I'm just a woman. I was like, why are you talking like that? I was like, you just know your shit. I was like, if you don't know your shit, then it's not because you're a woman. It's because you don't know your shit. Like, so walk in the room and know it. And then you can know your shit and someone still treat you like that. And then I have to stop and think, that's on them 100%. But I wonder if sometimes it's a gender thing. I haven't run into it a lot. I feel like I have a lot of respect for my network and it's reciprocated. And if you saw the comments on that post, I felt like there was still a lot of respect happening.
Yeah.
And I had a couple people chime in and were like, do you even know her? Like, it was kind of funny. Shout out to Christina. Thanks for that. But yeah, it's funny because I don't know. Sometimes it's just a position. Like, that was a broker that had done that to me yesterday. And he was so incredibly rude. I've had a lot of sellers be like that, men too. And I've even gone up to a house in sales and like to sell the windows. And I had a tape measure on me. And the guy, he literally looks out the door behind me and goes, someone else coming with you? Yeah. I was like, nope, I'm all you got. And he said something. And I said, you know, it turns out it's really easy to use a tape measure. Anyone can figure it out. And I just walked in and do it. Another thing I do, though, is if I notice that air about them, what I do is I kind of do little things like if they get up from the table, I'll remain sitting. Or I'll just kind of do something to where I'm like, this is my house now. Like, you know, and I kind of just read them. But I've gotten in situations with people, and my number one thing, and this is how I think you get the respect, is I'll say, I'm going to stop you right there. You're being incredibly disrespectful. Do I need to get someone in here that I have a little bit more respect for? And ironically, that works a lot. I've had people go, no, it's fine. I'll work with you, because they think they can just take advantage or let out their rage on you. So I think that it's our responsibility as a woman to just put that boundary in place.
Sure.
That's the number one thing I've learned. Is like, if I like you might not have invited that in, but if you don't cut it out or set your boundary, then you are setting the pace for how people are going to treat you, and that's your responsibility.
For sure.
I think women just need to not take it that way. Don't look at it as a man or a woman. Look at it at the job. Do you know as much about that job as they do? And if you don't, then you might have to pay some dues. Yeah.
I mean, if you can produce, I don't care what gender you are, man. We're trying to get from point A to point B, man. Mm-hmm. Like, that's the goal here.
That is the goal.
There's no other goal. That's the goal.
You know, I was talking with Eddie Wilson was giving an example about, I don't know if you're familiar with him. He sold like 76 companies last year. He's a beast. He's a beast. He's talking about his warrior culture. He's talking about, I think it's his CFO. She's a female or something. And he's like, she will eat your lunch. It cracked me up because he's such a he's a very strong leader, and he's like, this is warrior culture. Like, you're not unique. Your success is proven by you performing. And I love that. But I think so much of us are scared, especially as a woman, to implement that and to live by that too.
Sure.
Because we're supposed to be the nurturing kind, and And I think that I think I fit with the men better because my father gave me the confidence to just say, hey, it's about like setting your boundaries and letting people know you're here to do business. And it has nothing to do whether you're a woman or not. It has to do with your knowledge base and your character. And that's all that matters. And the people that you're going to have in your life are going to be the ones that see that. Everyone else can, screw off. So I think if you go in with that mindset and stop looking at it as a gender thing, you'd be surprised at how far you can get.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Truly.
If you were giving advice to young sales people and you had to distill down all of the experience and knowledge that you have into just like 2 or 3 or 4 like hacks or hints.
Okay.
What would be some of those sales hacks that you might pass along? Some gold nuggets.
Some sales hacks? Yeah. One of the best. Okay, so number 1 would be see how many times you can get told no. Like, don't be afraid of no. And if you are, see how many times you can get rejected in one sitting. Just start there. Like, if you're not so good at selling, take the no. And see it as a challenge every time it happens. It's not rejection. Just say no and be like, well, what are they really saying no to? Right now, no to the product, no to you. Like, what are they saying no to? And how did you get to that no? So anyway, I think that's number one thing I learned young in sales. Number 2 would be practice your craft. Like, every objection you get in a meeting, go write it down and think about how you could have answered it differently. Write it down religiously. Go talk to your other sales and like role play constantly. Gosh, we did that for hours. Like,
yeah, it's
like
crazy.
all we did.
It's awesome.
But it works, and you get more. I used to just listen to the closer survival guide before every appointment for like a year. I would just listen to the closes one after the other. I'm like, this shit doesn't work. And then one day I was sitting there, and I was told no like 50 times, and I finally was like, you know what? I'm just gonna go for it. I'm gonna Grant Cardone him. It worked. Like, I actually got that sale, and I just like went for it.
You.
So it's like, just learn different ways to do it, but make it your own. And that's the number 3 is like, make it your own. You can say the words, but if you don't believe it, no one's going to believe it. I mean, you got to find a way. My favorite was this woman who said, I think we're going to do it. Like, we're going to go ahead and buy the windows. And she said, I really don't feel pressured. And I was just smiling inside because I was like, oh, you don't even know it's happening. So I was putting on the pressure. It's just in my own way of doing it, that she didn't even know it was happening. So some people can be very direct, but to button up your deal is to make the ask and put the pressure on in a way that you're being true to yourself, and people are going to respond to it. And you're not going to get every sale. I mean, there are times where I'm brought along on the guys' appointments because they're like, we need you to soften me up. Like, can you partner with me? And then vice versa. Sometimes I would go in with like a hard-headed type of person, like, hey, I need a guy over here to kind of tag team. And then we would feed off of each other and figure out who are they responding to. So sometimes it's just knowing your own unique style and then partner with somebody who can kind of be the other half just in case they need that type there.
Sure.
But you got to know yourself.
Yeah, that's awesome. Your exponential growth, right? Like the growing pains there.
It's so painful.
I know that's what drove you, if you want to use that term, to the folks at Sharper. Mm-hmm. What has their direction and coaching and mentorship helped you with the most? Is it more about getting objective, unbiased perspective that you know is coming from a place of, hey, we're here to help you? Or
yeah. One thing I like how they've described them.
Sell me Sharper.
Wait a minute here. So
sell me this pen.
When you're your own boss, I think I had posted once, I was like, man, I wish I had a boss to go to like help me, right? When you don't have that, who are you held accountable to? Sharper, Gary always says, we're like your board members. You come every quarter to us and we're going to let you know if you're doing anything stupid. Like they kind of are this like built-in board member for the entrepreneur, because they're going to stop and say, hey, we've gone down that road and it's not going to go very well for you. Like we were literally at dinner and all of them were like, hey, Casey, we had bets that you would jump back in. And I was like, dang it. Like they know you and they hold you accountable. But so the biggest thing that I feel like they do is they hold you accountable in a very personal way. It's not just business, it's personal. Like they get to know you. And so you're with people that are there's some like you and there's some not. Like and you really can learn. There's a woman there. I think her name's Kim. She's a beast. Like she is just driven, does multifamily, does all sorts of stuff. Her CEO visionary, they've known each other for like 19 years, and we were talking about this, like knowing people. And she made a comment. She said, had I not known his like predictive index or understood who he was, this relationship would not have worked. And so I think that another big thing they bring to you is knowing yourself and learning others and how to look at it and not see, because we always want to hire people that are like us. You know, we were talking about that earlier. Well, we get along with them. This is fun. This is great. No, you need people not like you. You need people that are going to fill the gaps and give you healthy task conflicts so that you guys can grow and innovate constantly. So I think that they really position you to know those sorts of things and how to look for it, how to build profiles. Hey, what's the best profile for this seat? Like, how can I guide? And so they really train you in those aspects of your business. So they really help you hire. They actually have a service called Sharper Personnel where you literally tell them what the job is, what the description is, and we build a predictive index template. And like, I need this type of person. Go find them for me. And they will go find them for you. And they'll test and do things like that. So I've hired them for a couple positions. But in these quarterlies that we go to, and they're in some city, the next one's in Salt Lake City in a few months. We were just in Nashville. You're getting with the same people every quarter. So it's kind of like, hey, how did you solve that problem last time? You know, you're just constantly feeding off of each other and learning little things from experts who have done this. Like they aren't just, you know, a guru, or as people say, gurus these days, who have been in it for a few years. These guys have been in it for decades. They have built stuff. Like they've built several companies.
They've actually done it.
They've actually done it. And they're going to train you at every stage, right? So they talk about the major stages of business, and you can kind of position yourself and figure out where you are. So are you in the startup phase? Are you in the profit phase? Are you in the growth phase? Has anyone taught you how to build your company to sell it? You know, like they do stuff like that. So no matter where you are, they have a bunch of different like products for you to where you can just meet up with them quarterly, or they can come to you and help you process out your business at every stage. So there's some like people who have become quite successful. Gary was just talking about going to see someone recently. He's like, well, they've got their processes down. Now we get to do the fun stuff, like how to start really trimming down the fat in the business and do. So they're kind of like, you can't outgrow them.
Sure.
You know, they're just going to start partnering with you in ways, and just the network of referrals that happen in there, because I get more referral business off of them just when they're with companies that have a need. He'll pick up the phone and call me and be like, hey, call these people. Awesome. They need you. But I like that because I know they have the same values as me, right? They value processing. They value core values. You know, they're going to respect. And so it's kind of like a built-in network of like-minded people that are going to have the same type of respect for the process that you do. And that's hard to come by. Really hard to come by. So
how did you decide on them over the myriad other options?
I don't know any other options that teach you how to do business. Everyone's out there teaching you how to get sales and how to get houses and all that kind of stuff, but no one's teaching you how to do a business. And they're not, a majority of people with Sharper are real estate, but there's trucking companies there. There's a whole bunch of different types. It applies anywhere. So I remember asking myself when I finally stumbled across them, I was like, I feel like I'm just stuck. I learned so much about real estate so fast from these people, but no one's really got it together. I'm just going to throw this out there. A lot of the people out there, I've worked with them and I fired them for a reason, because they might be doing a lot, but they're still in their business. They're still doing everything themselves or trying to coach or do something. None of them have retired out of their businesses. And the ones that have probably gotten help from something like Sharper. So I think that's the difference. Are they teaching you the skill set you need in your business, or are they teaching you how to build your business and operate your business, which are two completely different things.
Big time.
And they're the ones that told me, you need to hire an integrator right now. And I thought I was too small for one. And they're like, oh no, hire one right now. And it was the best. My whole business just exploded after that. So they just help tweak you in ways that you don't have the vision to see.
Very interesting. maybe in the first 15 minutes of the pod, you were talking about how people are doing a lot of transactions on their own, will cap out, they'll burn out if you don't. You didn't use these words, but that's the question I'm going to ask. If you don't have balance, it's just not going to work long term. It's not sustainable. I mean, we can all put in a 72-hour stretch of just put your head down and get through it, but then there's a crash after that.
Yeah.
And it's not a very pleasurable, repeatable process there. How important are is your personal growth and the things that you do for yourself to your ultimate business success? So things like, but not limited to, cryo, hyperbaric, meditation, nutrition, working out, getting really good sleep, hobbies, interests outside of business, because very difficult for me to do much of anything but do business stuff.
Right, and then you only hang out with people that do business, and it's like this vicious cycle.
And then that's all you talk about.
Yeah.
And then your joy or maybe enjoyment of life is mine just starts to wane, where if I take a step back and go, okay, I can do that tomorrow. Now, got to put the phone down.
Yeah.
Got to take a couple hours here. Talk about your personal processes.
So I'm not good at this, but I was putting in probably, and I'm not exaggerating, 12 to 15-hour days a day for a solid year.
Good for you.
Like, I was exhausted.
Grinding.
I was not a normal person. I think I had tacos and cheeseburgers literally every day delivered to me. Like, I was just like in this place. And I'm not going to lie about it. There's a time that I was in survival mode, and I don't think survival mode's a bad thing. You just don't want to stay there. Right. So for me, I accepted it and said, this is where I'm at. I'm going to own it, and I'm going to get balance. I don't really believe in balance. I think it's kind of bullshit.
It's illusory.
It's more like, I think it's Randy Zuckerberg Ryan gave it to me, this book called Pick 3. So you've got 5. You've got family, health, friends, work, maybe social life or something like that. Pick 3 a day.
Health, maybe.
Like, you can't do all of them. Just pick 3, and hopefully you'll balance out eventually, right? But just be aware, hey, I haven't seen my friends in like weeks. I should make time for that. So I just believe in like kind of rebalancing yourself. So for me now, hiring my operations manager got me out. Thank God, because I don't think I would have survived much longer. And it allowed me space and breath to think. That was the integrator.
Sharper pushed you in that direction.
Yeah, and she's been a godsend because now she's taken so much off. I'm like banned from morning meetings.
Did they find her for you?
Yeah.
Awesome.
What's cool about it is they designed her according to my PI, right? So they were like, well, if you have someone too high A, like, y'all are not getting along. Right. So they kind of helped gauge that with me, and she's like my other half. It's amazing. But so one thing that we learned, then we had to learn how to be coworkers in leadership, right? Okay, what are you supposed to be doing daily? And because I did everything, right? So then you have to go through that process of, you go through this like identity crisis as an owner, where you're like, what should I be doing? Because you're so used to doing that you not finding your balance is doing a disservice to your entire team. So actually, Sharper is the one that helped us with this. This is awesome, like training on COO and CEO, what you should be doing. And I was laughing because I went in there like, a CEO, you should be doing 4 things. And I'm like, okay, what are these 4 things? And they're like, thinking and writing and reading and being consistent. And it was like the most basic stuff. And I was like, that's it. And then you go into the COO meeting, like what you should be doing, holding the meetings, checking the number. It was like this like list. And I was like, I have anxiety looking at that. And they were like, oh no, this is what I need. I need lists and structure and all these sorts of things. And so to come around to what you do for balance and like whatever, I think, again, it goes back to knowing yourself. I have to have time to think. So now if I don't read or write in the mornings and get into a flow state of thinking, I'm not good. Like, that's how I find balance. Sometimes I'll work out, go for a run. I actually bought a punching bag and it's let my rage out.
Good for you.
I think I sprained my wrist the other day.
Oh, no.
But I do things like that to just get my body moving, to get me in a state. There's a really cool website called I think it's the Flow Genome Project or something like that, where there's like certain people have to do certain things to trigger into a flow state. And flow is really just you being in that core excellence, like your rhythm. You don't even know what's happening, but you're just getting it done. Well, people get triggered by that, by exercise, by sitting and thinking, meditate. Like there's a few different ways to get there. And so I think that was one thing. I'm a thinker. So it's like I take the time to do that and I feel rested. And that's how I take care of myself. And I've found that when I do that, I can pull away easier. So if I started to notice when I was in the weeds and I started to get that anxiety again, I would pull back. And it's counterintuitive because you just want to dive in, especially as a problem solver, and you feel responsible for everything. But I'm learning now when to empower the team to do it so that I can keep my balance. And then I realized every time I jump in, I'm causing everyone chaos. And I think I'm helping, but I'm not. And so my operations manager, Emily, she goes, Casey, you're not allowed to come to the daily huddles anymore because we're going to handle this and you just go read and write. And I'm like, I feel lazy. And they're like, oh no, we don't know how to solve the problems like you do. You just got to give us the vision of how to do it. And so anyway, I think that's just how I manage it. I know my boundaries and I know that if I don't have think time, I'm going to go into a zone in a bad place where I'm going to screw everything up.
Yeah. You used the word, you've done this several times where I'm about to ask you a question and then we're very synergistic, but chaos. Yeah. So chaos is very interesting. Some people thrive in chaos. Most business coaches will tell you that, chaos is not the friend of success, right? All of that type of stuff.
Yeah.
I firmly believe that chaos is very important, especially to the growth of like new team members. Mm-hmm. When things are just in upheaval, there's craziness going on, like that freeze that we had in February, right? People's houses flooding everywhere,
wild.
Right? And because when you're, again, under duress, I think you learn more, or at least what you learn when the bullets are flying is way more valuable than what you learn when the sun's out, you know, and you're just poolside. What's your opinion of chaos, though? Because a lot of entrepreneurs have different opinions of it.
I literally have it on my level 10 meeting board to document chaos protocol. It's a real thing on my board, like
your FEMA
chaos
or something?
protocol. Like, what do we do? I thrive in chaos. I'm one of those people that can make sense out of chaos. I will go into a space. You could literally verbally throw up on me, and I'll be like, okay, the only thing that matters from that is this, and this. Let's focus. But then I don't necessarily want to run it. I'm like, okay, now you guys can figure it out. So that's how visionaries are, right? Like, we see chaos, and we find that idea or that thing, and we run with it. But chaos, and you do thrive. So perfect example is we had literally 3 TCs quit in a row within a 30-day period. I mean, this is hard stuff. This is not for the faint of heart. What we do is very tough. And we hopped back in, and I was laughing. And, Emily was very frustrated. She felt like she was a failure. She's like, this is just chaos. I can't even do my job because I'm stepping back in. And I looked at her and I said, but look at how much we've learned on how to hire. Like we had an idea of putting our operations manual in place. That went on the side, but guess what? We totally fine-tuned. Not only that, we documented the onboarding process better. We were able to realize and do it in real time. And now that's something that was on our plate that we finished that we didn't even anticipate finishing. So I think when you have that chaos, there's 2 ways you can handle it. You can operate in it and just thrive, but the rest of your team doesn't thrive in the chaos. So if you're not going into that chaos and saying, here's what we need to pull out of this, and here's what we need to document while we're figuring this out, and then fine tune it from there, because you're constantly tuning your processes, right? There's going to be a time where you have them all in place, but every time you grow, it causes more chaos because now you have team members that don't know their lane or something like that. So you're constantly adapting. It's almost like you need to have a protocol in place when the chaos happens so that you can learn from it and pull from it. That's the most important difference, I think, from the companies that make it and the companies that don't. But if I'm going in, like they always say, visionaries need problems to solve or we feel useless, which is true. We'll jump back in and create the problem, right?
100%.
That's what I did the other day. I caused chaos. Now my team is like, Casey, we don't even know what's happening on 50 files. Like, what happened? Like, what is going on? So now I have to slowly let it back in. But we'll come in and just say, we'll get all creative and be like, we should do this differently just for fun. And everyone's like, no, it's been functioning just fine.
Right.
So it takes a lot of humility to step back from that and say, okay, I get to now think on how to grow. Let them figure out how to operate. Let me just give the idea and let them figure out how to implement it. And then let us stay focused over there rather than create the chaos.
Sure.
It's going to happen, though.
How have your hiring practices and your hiring success, how have those improved since you've started using the predictive index?
Well, I stopped interviewing people because I can tell that my vision for that piece, and then I gotta let them vet because I think we are like, I just want people that are easy to be around. But then I realized I'm not operating next to them on a day-to-day basis. The only person I'm really accountable to is my COO, and she's the person I need to, fit with. Everyone else, you have to have the right personality managing. And quite frankly, she even told me, I said, do you want me to train the new TC? She goes, hell no, I don't want you to train them. She goes, I feel like she's more my pace and you're like a fire hose. And that's probably why the other two quit. It's because I was trying to train them and I'm just like fire hosing info at them. So we've learned that you're not always the best trainer. You're not always the best person that should hire. And so I stepped back from that where I wanted control. So I made the first couple of hires. I'm not even hiring VAs anymore. I'm having the VA who's training them and working with them hire. So my piece of advice is whoever's managing them should be doing the hiring. You might be able to do like the second round or give your input or something like that. But the person that's going to be accountable working with them, they probably aren't going to work well with you, but they're going to work really well with them. And that's what matters. Sure. That was a hard lesson.
What was your process before you started incorporating the predictive indexes?
I wish I could say I had one, but I literally
recruit somebody who you like their
hustle. I just put it out there and I thought, oh, you have some experience, come on board. And then I realized how different the experience was. And then I started realizing, hold on, the personality of a transaction coordinator for a realtor is so different. And most of the personalities that people hire in this position are the wrong person. This is why there's so much turnover. They're hiring just these admin people who just wait to be told what to do, and they like that. I'm like, I want a driver, but then I need a driver who's detail oriented, and that's like hard to find. So we realized we kind of have this ideal. It's called an operator type profile. They're super quick. They can move really fast, but their cognitive score matters too, by the way. I test on cognitive as well because you have to, I know if they're going to learn fast or if they're going to be a much slower pace. And at first I wanted to nurture them and be like, oh yeah, because we're all women, by the way, and not by accident, actually. Nice. Good for y'all. But now it's kind of fun because we just get each other and work well. Sure. And I don't have a single person that's the same profile. They're all completely different, but some of them are kind of in the same wheelhouse, but it gives good balance to things. So I've learned that those two things matter. How fast they're going to learn, and then what's their actual personality. Like, do they have the right profile to where they're going to be collaborative too? Because the stage that your business is at, the person, like, for example, the first couple hires I have were so fast paced. They learned by fire. They just sat on the computer with me and watched me work, picked it up, started documenting it. Now that we're more established, I need people that follow processes better, right? So it depends what stage you're at too, and how big that department is. That's going to vary what you need. So I've learned that too, that I can't, like, if I have someone who's too flexible, like if I had hired another me, like they're not going to last very long. They're going to want to do something else or be in a different department or whatever. Sure. It's kind of like a really good example of this is I am a Maverick, and Mavericks are amazing in sales. They're usually going to be your top salesperson, but they shouldn't be someone training or leading your sales team because we hate rules. We hate the process. In fact, I don't follow my own processes. Like, I'm just like, if I jump in a file, my checklists are all crazy. Like, I'm not going to do it. I just operate differently. Yeah. So, they're not going to be a good trainer, even though they're their top salesperson. So you have to consider that too. And I learned that from Sharper recently. I was like, that's really good insight. I was like, we would make terrible managers because we just want to do what we want when we want. And let us go do that because we're going to do great things, but don't let us train your team because you don't want chaos on your team.
The direct supervising managers that are going to be doing the hiring of the person who they're going to be working with directly, are you giving them autonomy to go like recruit that person, find those people, or are you and Sharper casting a broad net, bringing people in, putting them through the paces first, and then you commence the interview process?
Well, no, we actually know what we're looking for. So we've kind of, like I said, we build the profile that we want. We want their We want their sociability to be in a certain range. Like, I don't want my assistants being highly social because I want them to be in the details, worker bees, right? Yeah. And they love that. I remember one of them, I was like, oh gosh, some of my mentors who run our meetings were like, hey, we need to document every buyer we've ever had and put it in something. I was like, oh God, that sounds exhausting. And she's like, I'll do it. Like, I love tedious work. I was like, okay. Weird. You know, I'm glad you're weird, but I'm glad I have you. So I give free reign there, but I guide the vision. Like, my vision for this role is this, and this. I don't care how you find it, but these are the things that matter to me, and you have to check these boxes. I don't care how you do it, where it comes from. Here are some resources. Like right now, Emily is fully in charge of hiring the next TC. I might be the last interview, but I really don't have say. I think I'm trying to empower her to do that. And she was like, I failed the first 2 times. I was like, that's okay. We're getting structure now. We're going to actually find this type and not just put it to their experience. Because experience to me, man, it doesn't always matter.
Catch-22, man.
It is a catch-22.
Because there's a lot of, at my last place, we did it this way. And you're like, but you're not at your last place. Yeah. And you're not there for a fucking reason. Man. Right?
Yeah, there's a reason that you're not there. Makes you wonder. And then it's like you have to retrain them and trying to break certain habits. Like, it's really tough working with transaction coordinators that had to do realtors because they start to say, you didn't put this on the contract and you have to have that. We're like, actually, you don't. Like, this is the investor side. Things look a little bit different. It's like, you know, people are a little bit more flex on the investment side, but these types of people are like, no, but that's what the broker needs and has to get done. And you're like, no, we don't need that to close. That's just a broker compliance. We don't work with brokers. So it's like untraining their brain to think differently is so difficult to do. And then if you're an investor trying to fill this position, like, you've probably been doing this like ad hoc way of doing it that probably isn't the best, and you're just going to push bad habits back on them. So you either want to hire, so it's a catch-22. Do you want to hire someone with experience that knows how to do it, and you're going to trust their process and allow them to redo it, and you have to be okay with that? Or are you hiring that person to follow a process that you know is tried and proven and going to work? I think those things matter when you ask that question.
Gotcha. Yeah, 100%. Recruiting and coachability, though. Are you identifying these candidates for these jobs who fill these positions, who have these certain personality traits and these skills and these certain predictive index scores? Are you doing that some on your own, some through Sharper? Is it kind of a... Are people coming in through several different avenues?
It's kind of a mix. It's kind of a mix. Sharper knows they're certified in it, so they know. Like, they'll say little things like, "Hey, Casey, you probably need someone who is a little bit lower on the A or independent, you know, like, because of you." Like, so they know how to manipulate and be like, well, we got to watch for this or keep this in a range. Or it's funny because people will put up profiles and be like, hey, what position should they have in my company? And they're like, well, I mean, we need a little more info than that. It's very interesting and complex how you do it, because you're not just building the traits for the job but the people that they're working with too. And so there's no like easy way to do it. So I've learned what doesn't work in certain positions the hard way. So I know an idea of what I need. And if you go by predictive index, and I'm no expert, but I'm just learning as I go, there's like what they call stabilizing profiles. And there's like 8 different kinds, right? And then there's visionary profiles, and there's so many different kinds. So like, I'd be curious to be what yours is, because there's some visionaries that can also be integrators and they really don't need that guidance. So, you know, there's so many different ways. And then you go into companies where you've got 4 visionaries trying to run the show and you're like, no, make it stop. So yeah, I think I've learned like at least what type of role it is, and I can kind of build the idea, but it's never 100%. Mm-hmm. You got to kind of play with it and tinker it a little bit. Yeah. So I think I have the idea for the transaction coordinator, and for the VA side for sure, of like what it should look like. Mm-hmm. But I'm not like, if it's not an operator, I don't want them.
Yeah, don't you think it's weird too, as both of us are visionaries, when I'm thinking about my integrator, I'm like, I wonder, like, I can't identify, because I do have a high integrator score, so I can do all the tasks because like I used to do all of them.
Yeah.
I used to do everything. Didn't have a team. Finally, after complaining for years to my dad, he's like, would you just start hiring? Because he's really good with people, has managed people. And he's like, you love team sports. You were always the team captain. Why won't you hire a team? And my thing is, well, I don't think it works in business, right? And it's a tough deal. Like we've talked about during this podcast, it's very difficult to get that team culture where it needs to be. But to me, one of the most annoying things about new people, like especially if they show a lot of promise, is lack of coachability.
Oh yeah.
And that's something that I'm always asked, like, can you take direction? Do we have to sugarcoat everything? Because if the answers to many of these questions are no or yes, then we can't work together, because the bullets are flying and we're just throwing commands out left, right, and center. And the goal is for everyone to bank.
Yeah.
Here. That's the goal. So if we all know that's the goal, then everything we do is pointed in that direction. But my struggle has been when I look at my integrator wondering, do I think that integrator has got visionary traits? Are they looking at my job going, I'd rather be doing that? Because to me, the integrator work is very tedious.
To you, but not to them.
That's a weird deal to me, though. Like, I'm still trying to wrap my mind around that.
That's a super interesting insight. I think about that all the time. It's like when I got out of that meeting, I looked at Emily. I'm like, are you going to be okay? And she goes, oh, I feel great. She's like, I identify with this. And I'm like, you are so weird. But she has told me, she goes, I have anxiety thinking about the problems you have to solve. Like, I have anxiety about it, and I don't want to do that. And you just tell me what you need. So I think it's our job to set the vision. And there are people that probably want to be in that role, and that's why I say it's important to know yourself, because that might be ego driven more than it is who they are.
Yeah, that's that whole, do you want to be right or do you want to be rich thing.
Exactly. And what people, sometimes you got to tell people, they'll be like, oh, that's why for example, I'm a perfect example. I was married to my former business partner, and we were two visionaries. I just didn't know it. I knew he was like super dominant, off the charts. And I was like, it was just our profile types. I'm the type of person that if I'm in the room with someone, Gary calls it visionary with ego and visionary without. I was the visionary without the ego. And so in a room, I'll step back. But when I know in my gut something could be done better because they're just blindly like shiny objects, and I'm a little bit more pulled back, and I think I can do steps 1 through 10. An integrator can see step 1, 2, 3. A moderate like visionary, I'm on step 20, but I understand steps 1 through 20. And then you've got the like venturers who are like, I'm on step 50 and I don't know how to get there, but I'm here and you better come with me. And that's chaos, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, he said, well, we've got two visionaries, which is super rare. And he said, well, what happens is it's like beaten dog syndrome, right? You kind of get beat down and you don't even know you're a visionary. So I was trying to sit in a seat that really wasn't mine, but I picked up the slack because somebody had to do it. And that's why I felt so beat down. So I think that people who are like, oh, I'm good at this, but I really want to sit there. I have a client who's like this. There's a few of them that are kind of leading the company. And, they've expressed before, like, I don't know if it works because we're all trying to do the same role. And I think it might come down to ego. I don't really know, but I think so. And that they probably aren't going to last long because everyone's fighting for that same seat. And I've seen meetings with clients who are all visionaries sitting in that leadership, and it's exhausting. Nobody's got control. It's just everyone just at each other, against each other, and they aren't really subsiding. So I think it's interesting you say that, but I think you got to hire someone that really knows. And Emily has comforted me because I'm like, I feel like so much is on your plate. And she's like, I said, I'm just sitting here thinking through. She goes, that brain power is, I don't even know how to get there. She goes, but I do know how to follow lists and I know how to follow schedules and I can do that. And I was like, okay, so you have to trust that process is happening and that it's the right thing and that there are people who are going to thrive on that, even though you can't understand it.
Sure.
But there has to be some kind of accountability between you, and there has to be some kind of way that they have to buy into the vision. So your job is to get them to buy in the vision and to set the vision for the processes and then let them run with it how they want. And they still get that creativity, right? She's still in control of how it gets done. I'm not dictating that. So she gets to be creative and problem solve and have a little piece of that. And I think that that's why we work really well together, is because I can delegate if I have trust. And if I don't have trust, I'm going to jump in and take over, but I want to trust. So I think when you do have that partnership, that's super important to have, and allow them to hold you accountable and vice versa, right? She even came to me and said, "Why you don't give me time sometimes?" Because I'm just so impatient. Like, want to just get it done. I said, "That's very good insight. Thanks. I'll give you time, and I'll allow you to do what you're hired to do."
Yeah, I delegate, then step in a lot.
Yeah.
Like if it's not done in 2 hours, I got problems. If you had to measure success by one metric, and that one metric only was consistency, do you think that would be a fair way to measure success? Because we've all seen the flash in the pan successes. You talked about some of your real estate investors who won't even show up to a closing for a week because they're following the laser pointer on the wall like a cat. You mentioned herding cats earlier. Consistency, though, is very boring, but it's a hell of a way to tell whether or not whether or not their game is up here or whether their game is average. Don't you think?
100%. In fact, trust me, I have an opportunities board. Every time I have an idea, I write it there.
It's like a vision board.
It's like I use Asana, and we have this L10 where we store all of our rocks and what we're doing, and we're held accountable to those every week. And they have this little opportunities column, and it's like a mile long, and they always laugh at me. They're like, "Casey's at it again." But it's a space for me to feel like I can get it out, but I'm not disrupting our core foundation. If you don't have your foundation right, you cannot grow. You just can't. And I think people want to grow so fast, and everyone's out there preaching about how quickly they built and grew. And I think it's dangerous, because I pulled back. My goal, we were closing a lot of transactions by the end of 2020, almost 100 a month. Then we lost some big clients, had some turnover, went back down, and we in 3 months we'll be back up, and then we can go and pursue this next phase, and we can open the floodgates. Here we are in Q2, and I'm like, nope, the foundation. We stress tested it. It didn't work. We had turnover. I got to go back to basics. So I had to hold myself back and say, okay, we are not planning on growing this year. We're just going to focus on our foundations. We're going to have organic growth. I'm not going to be marketing. I'm not going to do anything major, because I am in the sales department to get sales, right? That's what I do, is to get clients. But I pulled back and said, I'm going to focus on growing small and steady and consistently. One of the best things you can do as a CEO is be consistent and not be disrupting your team by, we're going to switch CRMs again, or we're going to try this thing, or we're going to just change it up. I know your brain wants to do that. Trust me, I am you guys. But put it on your opportunities. Think on it before you disrupt your team. And that has been the best advice I've been given. So then now I come back and I told Emily, I said, because it's fast for her. And she said, thank you for slowing down. Like, just for a minute, like, we have to get this right. And once we get it right, then you start to replicate. So they call it the stress test. If you cannot grow without disruption, go back to basics. People want to grow. Got to get the basics down.
Growth is it's awarded, it's lauded, it's complimented, it's admired. But yeah, you grow too fast and you don't have systems and processes in place, you end up spinning your wheels because you got all these people coming in and then out, in and then out, and then you're never actually able to lay a foundation and then start to build up a framework. Yeah. And it's really hard when you're a visionary, because if you do see 10 or 20 years down the line, your 100% number one priority is growth. Was it Sharper and those people that helped temper that?
Oh, yeah.
They were like, listen, you're just going to keep repeating the same hamster wheel of failures if you don't get this thing right and get that bedrock.
They always say focus on one thing until successful. If you can really, really train yourself to understand that, you're going to do much better. It's the visionaries that run wild, that don't pull themselves back, that are destructive. And how many people do you know that started one thing and now they're like, I don't even know what you do for a living.
Many.
Like, I was like, I don't know what you're doing. Like, all over the place. And, nobody multitasks well. Nobody. You are doing a disservice. And I realized, what's my core product? Transaction coordinating. Trust me, I have a whole ecosystem of idea. I already know how I'm going to feed and revenue stream everything. And I want to be the biggest in the nation. I'm even partnering with title companies. I have a lot on the back end, but I have to build the trust slowly and the connection. And I realized I'm like, but we started dropping the ball with the growth, and then now we've got turnover, and how do we handle that situation? I was like, hold on, our core product is service. If I don't get that right, nothing else matters. So yeah, I think it's focusing until you're successful. And another thing too that they teach you is you go from your startup, you prove your concept, then you start making profit. This is when you see everyone go on vacations. They got that freedom that they've been seeking. But they aren't really going to scale much, because if you start to scale or grow, you're reinvesting and you're back in.
Yep.
And people don't want to do that. They're okay in that profit stage.
True.
And Sharper, they word it really well. They said the difference between people who go to that next level, and trust me, these gurus, they're at profit level, but they aren't really scaling. Some are, but not really. They're just comfortable in that profit. And now they're going to teach everyone else how to make profit. The guys in like the Sharper groups, they have purpose. And when you have purpose, you're reinvesting your time and money to go back in and do something greater, whether it be, I want to create resources to do something for someone else or whatever it is, or create this idea or fund this idea. That's purpose. And those are the types of people that I like to be around, because it looks different. People always ask that question about freedom. I don't identify with it. When people say, what's your why? I still don't identify with it. I hate that question.
That's a big one.
I don't like it because I don't have kids. Like, I don't have the traditional ways of doing it. And I was like, I think I'm just built for this. Like, I think I'm just built to work. I love it. I love the process. That's my why. It's just the process. It's because it feeds my brain. And I get to meet people, and that's how I want my life to be. I have no goal of being on a beach, collecting seashells. Like, that doesn't appeal to me at all. I want to be creating and moving and meeting interesting people and seeing new things. And that's it. Whatever gets me there, if I have to work on the beach, I'm okay with that too.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So I think I think that you have to go through the steps and meet people and talk with people before that purpose hits you. Might take some time. I mean, I'm in my mid-30s, heading to the 40s, and I still don't really know. I'm just kind of here for the ride.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to say, I have to just enjoy where I'm at and focus on it until it works. And then I can go chase something else.
That's cool. If a potential client, somebody wants to work with you, someone who wants to use your service, wants to reach out to you and connect with you, how can they do that? Via email. Via
email. So that would just be my name, Casey, Casey, at atlastcservices.com.
Cool.
It's kind of a mouthful. That's the best way to reach me. Facebook is always great too. I get a lot of business through Facebook.
That's awesome. Good for you.
And then we have a website, atlastcservices.com. You can also shoot me a message on there, and I'll get it. It will go directly to me.
Okay.
So that's the best way.
Awesome. Thank you for your time.
Yeah,
Appreciate
thanks.
it.
This was awesome.
Absolutely. You're a superstar. Well, that was great. Casey, awesome guest, super high energy, almost 2 hours there, and it seemed like it went by in 20 minutes. I hope you enjoyed that. I'd love to know what you think about the podcast, so if you drop a comment below, love to read those, see what you think. I enjoy the podcast. I hope you do as well, and I'll look forward to seeing y'all next time.